Hello chess fans. Chess is a game of strategy, planning, and tactics. To the players new and mid-ranked alike, someone like me, it is also a game of making mistakes and surviving blunders. In today's video, I'm going to show you the game of blunders. I was playing white in this game, so I started with my usual king pawn opening, e4. My opponent responded with queen pawn, which is a Scandinavian defense. Instead of the most common e takes d5, I changed it up a bit with e5. The game continued with e6, d4, c5, d takes c5. While it wasn't the same opening sequence, the game has transposed into Steinitz variation of French defense opening line. After bishop takes c5, I played bishop e3, which was met with bishop takes e3 and f takes e3. Bishop e3 wasn't a best move on my part because the continuation now could look like queen h4 check, g3, queen b4 check, queen d2, queen takes b2, queen c3, and at this point black has a good game here with slight advantage over white. The game, however, continued a little differently with knight to d7, knight to c3. This was my mistake as e-pawn was now hanging. Knight takes e5, bishop b5 check, bishop d7, bishop takes d7 check, knight takes d7, and knight f3. I grabbed an opportunity to develop my knight with an eye of controlling e5 square. Next came g knight to f6, and we both castled kingside. The game continued queen d4, queen b6, and at this point, for me, the best move would have been to exchange the queens because the pawn b2 was under attack. Instead, I played queen h4. Then came queen takes e3 check, king h1, queen h6, queen b4. Even though I was offered the queen exchange again, and while it was better for me to accept the exchange both times it was offered, I had declined it so far. I was down 2 pawns, and the game was tilting in black's favor, and the blunders haven't even started. We continued with pawn b6, queen e7, rook from a to e8, queen d6, rook d8, knight to e5. I occupied the e5 square with the idea of forcing the knight exchange, and that's exactly how it unfolded with knight takes e5, queen takes e5, knight d7, queen c7, d4, knight b5, knight c5, and I captured the hanging a pawn, queen takes a7. Much better here was to capture a7 with the knight, but this wasn't the game of accuracy, and then came the blunder from my opponent, rook b8. To save the b pawn, my opponent just hanged the d pawn, hanging the passed pawn, which is never a good thing. Now the score was about to be even, with me grabbing 2 pawns back from my opponent, with the second one, knight takes d4. Next came e5, and now it was my turn to return the favor. When playing chess, we must evaluate entire board and all pieces on the board, but it seemed we were playing with blinders on, so I played knight to c6, which was a questionable move. And usually when I blunder like this, I tend to catch it right after and skip a heartbeat, knowing I am in trouble. But not in this game. I didn't even notice the blunder that I had just committed. Neither did my opponent. Do you see it? Right here, my knight is hanging, and black's queen is free to capture it. Like I said, it seems we both were playing with blinders on, so instead of capturing a free piece, my opponent played rook a8. Here I committed another blunder. Instead of taking another hanging pawn on b6, I played knight to e7 check. My thinking here was to give a check first and then grab the pawn with the queen. Of course, what I had missed twice in a row now is that the queen on h6. After the king to h8, there was no follow through for my check to continue the attack. But I wasn't done with the blunders yet. If you haven't laughed at my game yet, get ready for the next move. Queen takes b6 pawn. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I had completely missed the fact not once, but twice, that black's queen was eyeing b6 square. I have no idea what kind of blind chess we both were playing that I had grabbed the pawn without fear of losing my queen, just like that. But go on and have a laugh when you see my opponent's response followed with knight d7 instead. What is interesting here is that my opponent chose to threaten my queen with his knight, which is more so evident that he has completely missed that his queen is free to take my queen. All this while, I had not realized all the blunders I had committed. Neither did my opponent, as apparent from this series of moves. I ended up moving queen to b3. Though better was to exchange off the queens here with queen takes h6, and next came f6. I played c4, and the final blunder of the game came from my opponent as he played queen to e3. I finally put an end to this miserable game by taking his queen on e3, and my opponent was left without compensation. The game had ended, but I couldn't believe how I had survived all my blunders and inaccuracies only to win a hopeless game. No matter what the game of chess is, whether it's skills, whether it's tactics, but in this case, it was a game of blunders. I walked away knowing I'll be cautious in my future games and will try to leave my blinders home. Until next time, cheers.